Peace. Welcome to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, the rule of law.
Peace, Shakil Knowledge Allah.
And we would like to welcome you to another broadcast of Knowledge Yourself radio. And this is Don't Snooze on the News, Part 2. So what we're going to hit you with today is just some recent events. We might dig up a few current events from the past just to kind of tell you the progression of those news stories. But for the most part, what you can expect is a definite spin on your mainstream media. So let's begin with our sponsors.
Or maybe an unspin.
Or an unspin, true indeed. For the most part, each show is sponsored by Global Position Solutions. Be sure to get in contact with them for your entertainment needs. You can also follow us on knowledgeyourselfradio.weebly.com. And of course, each broadcast is definitely broadcasted through Sage Studios. Contact Mr. Clark at thesagestudios.com. The studio is located on 1321 North La Brea Avenue in Inglewood, California. And you can contact him at area code 310-674-1105. And there are so many things offered at Sage Studios, not only studio vacancies, but also photography. He provides headshots and video shoots,
family portraits, wedding photos, you name it. You name it.
True indeed. And knowledge yourself. There are so many different things that are offered through this studio, so please get in contact with him for your photography and or studio needs. So the objective of today's show is the spin on news that made it into the mainstream media. And we would like to begin with a quote by Henry David Thoreau. It says, "To a philosopher, all news, as it is called, is gossip, and they who edit and read it are old women over their tea." Drool.
I gotta marinate on that one. I'll let y'all kill.
To the philosopher, all news is gossip. That's an interesting quote. I'd really say more than just the philosopher, to the person who desires to be informed about things going on in their own neighborhood and in the world at large. I guess that's who's coming as far as looking at it as gossip. You know what I mean? Because you have to hear everyone's different story or different point of view on what's being said. Right, so at that point it's kind of gossip because it's he say, she say, and then from that you got to read through it and gather enough facts so that you can get to the truth of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I see what he's saying as far as if you just take it on face value per se, and just you read your newspaper and you're like, oh, did you hear what happened? But you never try and dig deeper into the what and the how after that came about. Then yeah, you might as well be an old lady, I guess. Some tea.
Well, I think that one of the things that I'm very mindful of is that, if you hear it from a person, there's a strong possibility it is an opinion and not necessarily news, but more than that, it's not necessarily factual. So I think what we have to do as just a global community is we have to look at news objectively, but more importantly, we have to look at the source of that news, because news, which quite a few people tend to forget, is actually a sophisticated way of advertising a cause, whether that cause be political in its essence, or it be some other form of motivation to assume power. So when you're looking at the news objectively, you're not satisfied with just one point of view, and it's really important that we continue to do research, look at different sources, and actually talk to people who were present when certain events were released to the public. So that's kind of how I see that. If you don't want to be an old woman just having a conversation over tea, make sure it's factually based. Sure indeed. Pass it back to Jerul.
Yeah, I definitely can see where y'all are coming from. I think a philosopher is one who uses his own mind, to come up with various different philosophies. I think, as it relates to this quote, the philosopher is not the old woman because he's able to take the news or any information and make it his because he has things in his brain that he already been pondering on, where he takes in the new information and he can connect it so that it actually has some actual foundation to it. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that's
True
how I see
indeed.
it.
Now, because even when you look at today's alphabet, the zigzag zig, right? And like you said, connecting. So I think you really need to be able to connect the dots between different things that are said and pull out the best part and see how they intermingle with one another.
Right. Well said. So I wanted to introduce one of our first news events in recent events that have occurred in an area of Los Angeles County called Westmont. So this report, among other sources, was revealed in the LA Times. And it's basically a report that talks about a place called Death Alley, which is in the area of LA County known as Westmont. And just within the last 7 years, according to this news report, 100 people, nearly all of them male, have been murdered. And it's classified as 1.8 square miles wedged between the city of Los Angeles and Inglewood. And one of the things that is revealed in this article is there are several gangs that are basically, operating in this particular stretch of Los Angeles County. It says that the highest percentage of homicide, of course, are among males, but specifically Black and Latino males. The area is classified as a low-income area. So some of the changes that were made in that community was just simply making that stretch, or at least parts of that area, one-way streets, just so that the sheriffs would be able to monitor crime. But apparently it's just, a really bad stretch of LA County where homicides are quite common. So, for those of you who live in Los Angeles County, those of you who want to get active in, some area of your community, it's really crucial that you take the time to speak to youths, specifically about gang violence and anything that will lead to preventing these types of acts from continuing.
Wow. That's it.
Indeed.
Yeah, I got an article coming from realpharmacy.com. The headline is carcinogen found in almost all soda, and it's not just diet soda. Basically, they did some consumer reports and recently tested 110 samples of soft drinks in New York and California, and they were including iced tea, Coca-Cola, or colas, root beer, and non-alcoholic malt drink. And they found that there was a chemical called 4-MEI.
Yeah. That sounds like something that who's that black guy from Austin Powers?
Oh, Mr.
I can't think of
Yeah, I know
his
you're
name.
talking
That's something he would say, right? That
Yeah.
guy's evil.
Yeah, Dr. Evil?
Dr.
something like
Evil.
that. Yeah. So yeah, this basically has been found in studies with lab mice that it can cause cancer. But this doesn't have to be labeled on any drink. So this comes under the actual guise of artificial flavoring or artificial coloring, and as well as what's the other on the label. So if you see on your label artificial coloring as well as caramel coloring, stay away from it.
Caramel coloring.
Yeah. So you can also find the same ingredient. Yeah. Anything that looks caramel in color,
Right.
stay away.
Stay away.
If it's obviously not natural. So, other things you can find this in is bread, barbecue sauce, syrups, and beer.
Right.
Right, and also, I mean, I remember just over the years that name kind of rings a bell. I mean, you can find it in candy bar as well. Some of your top-selling candy companies.
Like a Rolo
use
or
that.
something?
Sure. I mean, if you look at a candy bar wrapper, you're gonna see caramel number 2 or something in that vein. So it's very common. Your Milky Ways, your Snickers bars, So thank you for that, man.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the places where you find it the most is in your Pepsi Ones, in a drink called Goya. Never heard of
Mm.
that. Malta, and those are the top three
Top three.
highest. But you can find them in varying levels and anything that contains artificial coloring and caramel coloring.
Yeah,
Mhm.
peace.
Yeah,
Great,
please.
great story. So I got a news story, and this comes from the Washington Times.
Mm.
So hacking expert David Kennedy says he cracked healthcare.gov in 4 minutes. Um, so this is something that we kind of talked about on the show
Mhm.
before, as far as you putting your information into that website, and then what happens to it. And not only putting your information into the website, but the questionable status of the people who come door to door to try to get that information from you, where you're just writing it down on a piece of paper and trusting that this individual is not a crook and is not going to go down to MacArthur Park
Mm.
and get some credit cards in your name. Um, yeah, so I don't know how you guys see that. I mean, this website is supposed to be secure and safe, and you have all your information there,
Right.
and this guy just broke in 4 minutes.
Right.
Yeah, I think for me, it's when you think about a firewall or anything that's supposed to protect a network from any kind of hackers, it's a man-made situation.
Yeah.
So, you know, if a man made it, another man could get into it. You know what I mean? So I don't think there'll ever be a firewall that intense to stop these things from occurring. You know what I
Right.
mean?
That's a
So
great point.
And the question that I have is basically, well, when people's information is lost in that manner and it falls into the hands of people who want to do something illegal with that information, um, how does the government plan on compensating or protecting those people from the misuse of their information? Is there anything that came out about that?
No, not really.
Mhm.
Which is interesting, which was kind of my argument from the whole beginning of the
Mhm.
thing was that it wasn't designed to be secure, um, and they really don't have any plans to make it secure. I
Mhm.
mean, there's been multiple articles. I'm not the only one saying it. Um, Even mainstream media is talking about it as far as just the wide openness of the system and why would it be developed
Mhm.
in such a way. Literally, you could, I don't know, spend 20 hours on Code Academy and learn how to write a better web page. That's more secure than that. He said that he was able on a standard web browser, so that's your basic Internet Explorer,
Mhm.
Firefox, Google Chrome, one of the main three, pick one. And within 4 minutes, he was able to get 70,000 records. He said
Wow.
that's the number he stopped at.
Mhm.
He could have been higher, and then it took him 4 minutes. So
Wow.
it's not like he needed any special tools and like you see in the hackers movies where they're dialing in. None of that. He just sat down at a normal computer and accessed 70,000. And then, like you said, God, how do I get taken care of when someone steals my data and now I'm getting bills for cars I didn't buy or whatever it is? How do I get taken care of for that? And
Mhm.
they don't
it's
seem to have an answer.
it's funny you had that current event because I went to work today and on the main screen there's different things that might I guess affect 24-hour fitness and things of that
Okay.
nature,
Uh-huh.
globally or around the country. And one of the headlines there was Target. I guess somebody hacked into Target's
Yeah.
system and
Yes.
got a lot of people's records
Right.
and things of that nature. And they were talking about how that affects 24-hour fitness. So
Mm.
Huh.
yeah,
That's
so
deep.
I
I
thought
mean,
that.
we're living in an age now where everything is going digital.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I got another article that I'll get into later that just kind of solidifies that point that everything is really online and they're really phasing out you holding tangible things in your pocket. You're not going to really have an ID card anymore. If you look at Disneyland is fading away the whole card that you have.
Mm.
So you don't have a card anymore. They did it by finger scanning. And
Mm.
now they're fading away the finger scanning and they're going to have wrist anchors that do everything for you. You can buy things on them and get you your front of the line pass. It opens doors. It does everything. You won't need a wallet or anything.
Mhm.
So you got to think in a world like that, someone would take better precautions to have some kind of security set up.
Wow.
Well,
So
Target did, by the way. I think they just offered the people like a 5% discount
just,
or something and told them to come back shopping.
just for giving into that. As far as systems are concerned, you know, like you just mentioned, systems are flawed. So we encourage all of you to look a little bit deeper into why they're developing certain systems just in places where we want to buy groceries or, food and beauty items like a Target. Um,
Right.
why do they need that type of information from you? Why does it have to be so personal in the form of fingerprints and things of that nature? Because, the last time I gave a fingerprint, it was to get an FBI background check for employment. Other than that, I can't really see you needing to do that unless you're being
Process for criminal activity at
Exactly.
a
You know,
police station.
Right, and again, there are so many corrupt people, inside of these circles and outside of these circles that, you know, your information is for the most part um, free reign. You know what I mean? It's just it's so accessible these days. So we want to continue with our discussion about health and science. I wanted to share a current event, and this actually was shared on National Geographic News, January the 11th, 2001, because there have been some recent developments in this area. National Geographic reported how the world's first genetically modified, first genetically modified non-human primate, which they said was carrying a bit of DNA. So basically, by them genetically modifying primates, it's meant to sort of improve research in the area of stem cell research, but more importantly, other diseases such as was mentioned HIV and cancer. So they want something that's a little bit more human-like, if for lack of a better word, where they can begin experimenting and trying to figure out how to isolate and then quite possibly cure some of these diseases that's plaguing us at the moment. Of course, we've already said it that sometimes you have to look at scientists and what they're doing because sometimes it's Frankenstein. You know what I mean? The idea is not necessarily to help people, it's to figure out how to better control or hurt people. So this would be one of those news reports that you should definitely follow. I don't know, Jakil, did you want to hit them with the babies?
Yeah, definitely. So
All
from
right.
dailymail.com .uk, they're talking about how they have the world's first genetically modified humans have been created. And so they created, I want to say 30 kids they developed.
30 or 38.
Right. And the interesting thing is of those kids, they all carried genes from 3 parents. So what they're basically doing is they're taking the mother who is not unable to facilitate having a child, taking someone who can have a child, taking that person's cells and embedding them into the mother who can't have the baby, which then allows her to become fertile. She gets impregnated by the male. The interesting thing that's happening is when the child comes out, it has all 3 people's genetic information into the child. Scientists all over the world are kind of wigging out about that. You know what I mean? They're not cool with that because of what can be done as far as altering the human genotype and then what that means. And then as far as what I think more importantly is if you start doing a designer baby type thing, which means you don't have to pay to have a child. What about people who don't have enough money to pay to have a child? Right? So now do those people just get wiped out of existence because they can no longer afford to go through the so-called medical way or procedure of having paying for children?
Right, very very interesting. I wanted to also throw another source in there, in addition to the Daily Mail that my brother offered. You could also find an article on CNN.com under technology. The article is titled "Designer Babies: Creating the Perfect Child," and it has this interesting question. Just imagine what will life be like in 2020. So they also go into detail about what the guy mentioned. One of the things I wanted to share because I know my brother wants to add on.
Mhm.
It said that the Center for Genetics and Society is trying to encourage debate on the topic as soon as possible, because what they're saying is that the danger of this, and I am taking this straight from the article, it says that, but according to Hayes, and Hayes is one of the scientists involved in this debate, uh, he says that this runs many risks. It's used in many countries to avoid the birth of female children. So, again, this is sort of like that Frankenstein theory where it's supposed to be used to help you, but here is how it could be used.
Right.
And take China, because we did report about China, who is really trying to work to figure out how to increase the amount of births of female children, because they have an extremely low percentage of females in China.
Yeah, it's interesting because it makes me think of when, I said on another show where, I went to a prenatal appointment with my black woman, and, there was a doctor who came in and was basically trying to sell us to do this test that will basically tell our genetics, so much so that they could tell exactly what conditions that child would be born with.
Oh.
So if, say I had kidney disease and, my black woman had, I don't know, I won't even say anything just because.
Right.
I want to have a nice night tonight. So. Yeah, say she had something and then boom, one of us passed it on to the child. They could look at the DNA to determine what gets passed to the child.
Right.
So not even the probability, but what will actually
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
on the child. Wow.
Yeah, like up to like 1 in, I think, 50 or
Okay,
very, very low
pretty
number.
accurate.
Yeah, pretty accurate number. Whereas the other tests, I think, were like 1 in 1,000 and 1 in 10,000.
Okay.
So it's just more of a precise test. But this led me to think like, well, what if we get to a point where they'll look at your genetics and say, well, you're not allowed to have children because your children will be born with this disease, or this disease.
Right.
Or their IQ won't be high enough to
Right.
help society grow and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Reminds me of eugenics.
And
Where did that come from?
I wonder how many of those people sit on eugenics boards. Bill Gates. Bill Gates.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Bill Gates.
I know we wanted to continue with our discussion about health and science, and what do you have for them to kill?
So I've got one from abc.net, and this is actually from the Australian website. So that's .au. So it says Australia and U.S. scientists reverse aging in mice, and humans could be next. So they basically figured out a certain gene that basically drops low once you get past a certain age. And so they're saying that they inject this back into the mice are showing the muscles tone back up. They're they're acting younger. They're more hyper. Their intelligence level kind of peaks back up again. So they're able to, for all intents and purposes, reverse the aging process in rats. Give me a moment. I'll find you the exact thing that they're putting in. But how do you guys see that? Because they're saying humans are next in this testing as early as next year.
Right.
It
So
seems like they're rushing to make sure that they could because like if it's as soon as next year, that means it seems there's a lot of urgency to get the
Right.
tests out there, and it's all about money, of course, and then it's all about a certain people who obviously age a lot quicker than others on the planet, and making sure that their existence is still where they want it to be.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, what's going to be interesting is when those people die that actually, I don't know, receive this new fountain of youth, as they're calling it. That's basically what we can call it.
yeah.
When those people die before people who age according to the natural process of life, what will be the debate then? And again, we can all enter into any type of experiment and allow people to cut us up and inject things in us and see how it goes. But most people need to really look at how certain things are going to alter their lives if it hasn't been thoroughly researched or if it hasn't been um, given the amount of time for this particular experiment to sort of show different results.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
I
I would like to see a rat that was like right at the edge of death,
right.
and then they stuck it, and then they brought it back 20, 30 years, and then it lived for like another 10 years.
Right.
Right? And so now maybe you have some time to study the effects, because so you make the muscles tone up and they act younger. But what about the other organs in the body? And what about the liver? What about the kidney? Are those things gonna youngin up?
Yeah,
Right. Or you can be an old man with a bunch of, or a young man with a bunch of old man organs.
Right.
Medicinal. I mean, all of it is dealing with the Frankenstein theory in medicine. I know, Jeru, you had something else for health and science.
Yeah, this one comes from actually livescience.com. The headline is "Human Hand Fossil Turns Back the Clock 500,000 years on Complex Tool Use." So basically, discovery of a 1.4 million year old hand bone fossil reveals that the modern human ability to make and use tools have originated earlier than scientists previously thought.
So was it the caveman 6,000 years ago that made tools?
Nah.
Oh man, it's blowing my mind. I don't know what that's gonna do.
Yeah, so this piece of the hand, or the bone of the hand, was found in northern Kenya, which obviously is Africa. The thing that's interesting to me about this is that scientists, that whole earlier than scientists previously thought. So I just don't like how a lot of the scientists will say they didn't have the ability to do something, but that them saying that is only based on what they've found to be true. You know what I mean? So I think they should always prefix it with, we haven't found anything that says that they aren't intelligent enough or they don't have the ability to do this, that, and that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I see. It seems like there's a lot of ego in play.
Exactly.
So it's like, we're the best, and these dumb people from back then didn't have the intelligence that we do.
Right. So, because generally they're talking about original people. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I'm speaking on. So, basically, it's
especially when they go back over 6,000 years, right? What are they talking about?
exactly, which where they're usually at most of the time. So, a key anatomical feature of the modern human hand is the third metacarpal, a bone in the palm that connects the middle finger to the wrist. Quote, there's a little projection of a bone in the third metacarpal known as the styloid process that we need for tools, said study lead author Carol Ward, an anatomist and a paleoanthropologist of the University of Missouri. This tiny bit of bone in the palm of the hand helps the metacarpal lock into the wrist, helping the thumb and fingers apply greater amounts of pressure to the wrist and palm. It's part of the whole complex of features that allows us the dexterity and strength to make complex tools.
Wow.
So
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting detail is that this is something that has been around since Leakey, one of the earliest anthropologists to actually find, he has become known as the Australopithecus. And like we've said on previous shows, the dates, the carbon dating on all of these fossils that they're finding are going back millions of years ago. So basically that's crashing through quite a few religious texts message about the origin of men and women, and they don't necessarily have an answer for these types of things.
Right.
That's just science and we'll leave that in the ground and bury it, and we don't want to hear about it. It's about this, and it's about this.
Right.
So I think the main thing that we need to keep in mind is that as man continues to progress, you guys like to use the word evolution. We use progress, advance. You can use evolution at school. You're going to see a lot more things change within men and women. You know, our abilities to do things faster, even the ability to do things in a more complex fashion. You know what I mean? There are children right now that they're making some major breakthroughs in just using computer technology alone. You know, so are we getting more intelligent as human beings? Is that a fair question to ask?
Yeah, yeah. I would say so. I would also say that a lot of the intelligence may be directed in a certain path, right? So it doesn't necessarily have the ability to blossom into what it really could be because they take it and they say, okay, we just want you to kind of go here with it. And if you don't go there, you get locked in some kind of weird paperwork, or they get it from you somehow. Now you're not able to develop that technology.
It sounds like a destructive path, though. You know what I mean? I mean, really, when we really draw it up, some of what we're finding and doing research on, I mean, it seems like it's being used to create this destructive path.
Well, you gotta think like I don't know if I wouldn't say we're any less intelligent, but I wouldn't say we are more based specifically on things like technology now. Whereas we don't have to use just our brain power as much anymore to contemplate certain different things because we could just jump on the computer and have that do it. You know, where we grew up in a time where we didn't have computers like that and things of that nature. So we can see both sides, and we should still be able to say, okay, this is how this thing can help me, but I still have my own mind, and I'm gonna make sure that that's paramount. Whereas the children, they haven't really seen anything but technology,
Right.
so that's all they know.
Well, here's a test for the parents out there. Go home tonight, if you're not over there, and look at your child and say, where do you find books at? And just see what they say. If they say a bookstore, you have a problem. Because they should say a library. I would like to pass it back to Jaquil. Thank you for that report, brother. That's very interesting.
That was a great one. So I got, this is an interesting one, and ever since I got into the solar facts, my quest for space knowledge has definitely increased. So I got one from the independent.com or the independent.co.uk, and this is dealing with my favorite scientist in the wheelchair, Stephen Hawking. I think he's like the only scientist in the wheelchair, or at least the most popular one in the wheelchair. He was even on the Big Bang Theory. You know, so yeah, but you do a big thing from the Big Bang Theory. In any event, Stephen Hawking is building on how there are no black holes. So previously in science, people were under the impression that the black hole was empty. Whatever fell into it just disappeared into something. And so it was like, some people mentioned that it may go into another part of space or another dimension. If you get into like quantum physics, they say maybe that will take you through different dimensions, through space and time, right? Because there's at least 11 that scientists say that they have counted, 11 other dimensions. The number's actually more like 22, but there's like 11 ones that they can name out for sure. And so Stephen Hawking's kind of put together this theory and pulling resources from other scientists. I can't remember this guy's name, but basically he was under the impression that black holes were actually stars that had collapsed in on themselves. And so if it collapsed in on itself, Stephen Hawking's kind of pulled from that and saying that if it pulls in on itself, then there's no hole. It's actually more like a cup, I guess. And so the best way you can really envision it is, and it's a cool test you can do to show gravity to your kids at home even, is you take like a piece of spandex or cloth or something and tie it around the edges of something so that you have a hole in the middle, right? And that covers the hole in the middle. So you put a ball, and it'll bend it, right? And so that's the equivalent of a star or a planet or the sun warping time and space. Like, and that's Einstein's theory of relativity, right? The warping of time and space. So when you put that there and you start throwing, you can throw like marbles in there, and you'll watch the marble spin around the bigger, object, right? Whatever it is. And it'll spin around it, and then eventually fall in. So you put a real heavy object, it'll create not a hole, but more like a bucket kind of. And so things would just kind of go to the edge or the event horizon and fall in, right? And they won't be able to escape the gravitational pull that object has put on that fabric. But if we're dealing with space, right? That object has put on time and space. So what he's saying is that it actually just bends it in. Things do actually creep out of black holes. The problem is it just doesn't come out in the same way that it went in. Yeah, and so that went into kind of a deeper theory or a deeper thought that he didn't necessarily go in on, but I like to pass it around. He was trying to say that the debate of if knowledge or information can be destroyed. And his thing was saying, from what it looks like he was going into, he would say, no, it can't be destroyed, because if you burn the book, as long as you keep the ashes, it'll be hard to read that information, but you could read that information, right? So although it's been changed to a different form, it's not been destroyed, but it's just been changed.
That's a really great, first of all, that's a really great report. I would say that, number one, for myself, I need to go into that area of my studies. So, I won't even touch the theory that you just so beautifully painted for our viewers and ourselves. For the most part, I would say that as far as knowledge is concerned, you can always destroy the vessel through which knowledge is disseminated from. However, by that time, it's already been given. So there's someone else that has that knowledge. Right. So let's just say the first person that saw a star that no one else saw, at some point he may make mention of it, because when we all have discoveries, very few of us are successful at keeping them secret. So we'll share with someone else, draw a picture of it, and then someone else gets it, and then it continues to live from there. So I would have to agree with that part about the analogy between the ashes and how that information is still there. You just may not be able to see it. How you see it, Drew?
Yeah, you can't destroy knowledge, because for me, the book isn't the knowledge, it's what the book does to the person who read it. So if you read a book and it charges you up and it does something to you to make you feel like, okay, this is right and exact, and then you cross-reference that knowledge with what already exists within you versus other things that you've read, studied in your lifetime, that's the knowledge. And, you passing that down to your children or passing it to a loved one or student or whatever the case may be, that's how knowledge doesn't get destroyed.
Wow. I like that part where you said how it's passed on.
Right.
One of the things that we always advocate is that you should be passing on what you know, if it's righteous and true. And you can choose any number of words for that, but pass on the right things to young people and to those around you. So why don't we go ahead and take a quick break? And we're going to return back and continue our Don't Snooze on the KOS News Part 2. Peace.
Peace.
All right, got it. Quick.
Lord, don't move the mountain, but give me strength to climb it. Please don't move. Please don't move. the mountain, but give me strength to climb it. Please don't move.
Yeah, that's funny, right?
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, Tarulala.
Peace. Jaquil.
And we're back with our news program, and we're going to go into world news today. So we have some really interesting articles to share with you. And of course, we always ask you to look into these sources and do your own research. I want to pass it over to Jaquil about some interesting comments in regards to his favorite president.
Everyone's favorite. Man, everyone hates Chris, but they all love Obama.
You're right.
Well, obviously not all of them. So this story comes from NewYorkPost.com, and it's Mitt Romney saying that Putin is a better president than Obama. So in any event, basically he argues that the Russian president has outperformed Obama on the world stage in many different places and many different times. And I mean, that's pretty much the gist of the argument, is that Obama's really been outperformed by the Russian president. And I guess he needs to step his game up. I mean, I'm not really sure where Romney was coming from.
It's interesting. Putin, I think he made a statement in regards to because the Olympics are going to be in Russia, right?
Yeah.
And he made a statement in regards to not allowing homosexuals to affect the children.
I was actually going to build on that. But go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I understand where he's coming from in a sense, and I like that there's actually a president taking a stance on not allowing the notion of homosexuality to be seen as a regular and common practice for the children specifically.
Mhm.
You know, when you're an adult, you can make the choice and do what you want to do, but for the children, so I applaud him in that sense. But I don't know too much else about him, so I'm not going to speak on him saying that he is a greater president or lesser or whatever. So
Right. I think one of the things I would have to ask, I mean, because, you know, we're just talking about the controversy in terms of statements like that. However, you know, people such as Putin, if you look at his track record, especially when there were those mysterious poisonings that were going on in Russia, that members of his administration or all of the affiliates within that administration in Russia just kind of overlooked. It's kind of
Really?
interesting that
Okay.
he would say something like that. But for the most part, I have to ask myself if Romney is if he's sober.
Okay.
Aside from being a sore loser, I mean,
That's what I was gonna say.
that's
Is
a
he just
really
a little
strong
angry?
statement, man.
That is.
You know, okay.
And so part of it, I guess he says in the political scene suggests that Russia has elevated itself in stature and America has diminished. And that's a Romney quote.
Mhm.
You know, I will say this. Russia has a 30% flat tax.
Mhm.
That's pretty badass. They did kick out the IMF and TFR
Mhm.
for the most part. They are getting rid of fluoride in the water. All three
Right.
things which America hasn't done yet. I don't know. Maybe that's what Romney's talking about. Maybe Romney's tired of having fluoride in his water, which I'm sure he doesn't.
Right. It's
Maybe
it's
Romney's
hilarious,
tired of paying
man.
high taxes. That's
Yeah,
what it is.
yeah.
And he would like to have the flat tax that they have in Russia. Oh, no, wait. He doesn't pay those same taxes. Okay. No.
So, you know, I mean, again, it's just hilarious. One of the things, since we did mention, you could take a look at CBSNews.com. Check out an article by Alfonso Serrano, dated for November the 23rd, 2006, which reveals one of the poisonings of I want to call this person, was he a photographer? Let's see. Actually, he's a former KGB agent. His name is Alexander Litvinenko, and at one point he worked for the Kremlin, but apparently he was one of those who was poisoned by a toxic radioactive substance. So, you know, to make those analogies, I mean, you know, come on, man. Either way it goes, sure, everyone tries to do some good, whoever they are. I mean, in most cases. But, you know, again, I have to question the man's sobriety. I mean, if you know about Putin's history, it's been a really cold, dark, ruthless history in Russia. You know, don't let the Olympics fool you. I mean, they failed the Olympics in Nazi Germany. You know, remember that? They held the Olympics in Nazi Germany. That doesn't necessarily mean the ruler of that country is righteous. You know, because they're holding the Olympics there.
Well, remember the God broke down what Olympics was in the first place.
Yeah, go back to that show.
That being said, though, as far as what you were building on as it relates to the Olympics, I have an article from the New Yorker, and it's put in good. How did you pronounce his name, God?
Who was that the command that was
Putin?
Putin? Vladimir Putin.
He's a pretty buff dude. I don't want to mispronounce your name, man. Get beat up by some KGB people or something on my way home. So he made some interesting things, and like I said, or like the guy was saying, I definitely agree as far as him making a statement and a stance on homosexuality and the whole agenda. Not necessarily. I mean, the reality is, you're a grown man or you're a grown woman. Do whatever you want to do. But as far as the agenda that's been put behind the homosexual movement, right? As far as you know, you have in American states are trying to teach kids about anal sex and homosexual relationships in schools, and I don't think they should be teaching them about heterosexual relationships, you know, because those kind of things aren't on the kids' mind. So there seems to be this whole kind of movement behind it. So anyway, some statements that he made is kind of comical. Specifically, gay spectators should remain fully clothed at all times and resist the temptation to unveil the chiseled biceps or shredded abdominals, he said. Furthermore, he added, under no circumstances should gays oil, grease, or otherwise lubricate their torsos in an effort to heighten their glistening, ripped pectorals.
Can you tell our viewers who said this again?
This is the Russian president. And this article comes from the NewYorker.com.
I mean, man, you know, when you hear that vivid description of what gay males should not do, I mean, it just reminds me of what Jim Kelly said, man, in Enter the Dragon. He said, man, you come right out of a comic book. Why don't we just make newspapers, man, like comic strips, man? This is comedy.
Right.
You know,
no,
man,
that is classic.
thank you for sharing that, brother. I mean, wow. You know, let's go into at one point in time what was Russia's ally. Talk a little bit about China. There's a film documentary called Web Junkies, and actually it is a documentary about the internet addiction camps that China has been running for several years now. And the filmmakers Shah Shlam and Hila Medalia are said to be going behind the doors at Dasong camp in Beijing. And this is considered one of China's first of many, quote unquote, rehab correctional facilities. So, I mean, there's this push in China to rehabilitate teenagers that are addicted to the internet. And, you know, I was kind of trying to look at the trailer, you know, because of my low bandwidth, so to speak. I couldn't really draw too much from it to share with you, but there is a trailer on there. If you go ahead and actually you put in a search for Web Junkies, you should be able to view the trailer and see what that's all about. But it's just really interesting because it said that these treatment centers are said to be 3 to 4 months in length, and they involve military physical training, medication, which is a strange buzzword, therapy sessions, and controlled diet in order to reconnect them with society. So, any thoughts about that? You know, do our teens in the United States need to be rehabilitated because they're internet addicts?
You know, it's funny that you say that. So, here's some things that has happened due to internet cafe. In China, for instance, there have been, and Korea, there have been multiple cases of people who have died, even in Canada, who have died from being in these cafes because they just go there and then they play video games all day long, literally hours, like days. There's one report I'm thinking of. This guy paid for close to 3 days, did not use the bathroom, probably only had like some juice and chips, I don't know, and ended up dying. So, you know, in that aspect, you got to think, at what point do you get up and say, all right, enough computer games is enough computer games, you know what I mean? Or enough, whatever I'm doing in front of this computer, I should get up and go do something else. What's the draw and attraction that keeps people on these things for hours? When you walk around today, even people driving in the cars, hence they have a law for that. No being on your car, no being on your phone while in your car, because you guys are on the road, I'm on the road like all day long, so I see people while driving.
Oh, that's called multitasking.
But that's called multitasking. I was gonna say maybe I'm not a good driver because I always keep my head up and I'm looking at the road. I guess I should be driving like this and it'd be more efficient. So you know, I would argue that due to some of the activities that are on the internet, maybe people do need to be re-educated. I mean, you know, people spend all day long on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, but yet can't tell you anything important going on in the world. And then when you give them a quote about something, they tell you, no, that's not correct. And you say, well, look it up. They don't look it up. And then you say, okay, well, here's the link. All you have to do is click the damn link and then read 3 paragraphs and it'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about. And then they won't click the link. But they're on the internet all day long, right? So you got to think there's got to be some kind of re-education because people definitely aren't using the internet for what it was originally designed for.
Maybe redirection.
Right.
I mean, directing them to what they should be doing when they're on the internet as opposed to just wasting time. Yeah, I think for me, you know, like I said, when you think about the youth again, this is all they know. So if you grow up and the internet is all you know, quite naturally it's going to be something that you indulge in because that's all you know.
Right.
Whereas us, we know, like, man,
there's stuff to do outside.
yeah, like, you know, like,
I can meet people in real life.
Exactly. Sitting behind a screen that's burning my eyes all day,
Right.
that's not something I want to do, or it's not the best thing for me. But, you know, these children, they don't really have that, especially the ones whose parents aren't really doing their job. So
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's funny that you said that. And I wish I would have brought up that article. They were saying that women who are more, what's the word I'm looking for, attached or ingrained to the internet are more likely to have kids that are like that too, because they end up giving those things to the kids as something to do
Mm-hmm.
to keep them busy, but because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't necessarily see the wrong in it. You know, you have your child, and not that the internet is wrong, but so let's say that the difference of your kid playing on a Leap Pad and playing games that are dealing with math and spelling and things like that versus being on an iPad and playing freaking Angry Birds, right, for multiple hours, or playing that bowling, or Fruit Ninja, right, which none of these things teach you anything. Well, I guess you could argue that Angry Birds may teach you about science and physics, right, because you got to use angles. Aye. But no one's explaining it to the kids like that. You know what I mean? And so they're losing all that time doing something creative or productive for the brain versus doing something that takes away from brain power.
Well said. I think one of the things that my brother said is we need redirection. So I think just for us, I don't recall the internet ever being pitched to us as a tool to use in order to educate ourselves. It was just the internet. Wow, this is the next big thing.
Right.
But there was really nothing behind it that told us that it was a tool for education. So I think just with my son, he'll play some of those games, however, within the time frame that I give him to play that game, I'll tell him, okay, well, you have to play this many minutes of a science or a math thing. And then I'll look over his shoulder and say, well, which one are you going to choose? I'll choose this one. And so he'll play a game that teaches him scientific concepts and math concepts. And, that's basically how I bargain with him. You know what I mean? You can't just be on there for 2 hours and you're just playing a Power Rangers game.
Parents have to be the filter. That's the biggest thing. You guys have, parents. Not saying that your children shouldn't use the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be crazy in the world that we live in to not allow them to use it at some point.
Exactly.
Be a filter. Don't just give it to them and say, "Oh man, yeah, I got my free time now." You can just sit in front of the computer all day while I'm over here doing this, that, and the third. Probably on the computer myself.
Right.
Taking selfies of myself and posting them.
Selfies.
Yeah, that's a word for them now. Selfies.
Selfies. All right. I got to get a selfie. All right. I just don't see no point of a selfie on my Facebook because you guys see me on the Knowledge Yourself radio show. So you take a still picture and put it somewhere so you know who I am. Well, why don't we go into a discussion about technology? I want to give it over to the brother Jakil. Tell us a little bit about some drones. This is an ongoing effort to put drones in your air. They're already in your air, but
Exactly.
Where are we at with the drones?
So let me bring up this article. This is from NBCnews.com. Basically, what they're talking about is how drones can also be used to help first responders on the scene. So, initially it sounds like a good thing, right? You don't necessarily want your police force, your police people walking through a building with an armed person and have them not have any idea where he could be hiding at, the layout of the building, who else is in the building, are there other friendlies in the building, or are there other enemies in the building, potential threats, right? So these drones, they're arguing, some of them are kind of big. When you actually do the knowledge room, and we've talked about this on the show, there's some drones that they're able to put that are bug size. So they go into that in the article, how they'll have drones that are like the size of spiders, or the size of flies that can fly in groups and then disband out. Some of these can deliver, what's the word they use? Lethal. Basically, that can kill you without having to put an actual person in harm's way.
Right, and I remember they talked about this probably, it's been decades.
Right.
They were first proposing to do things with insects in reference to surveillance, right?
And now the funny thing is when you think of movies, what's that movie that Tom Cruise was just in? Oblivion? So the one that have the drone that follows him around, and the drone is able to scan him and know that he's good, but scans everyone else and knows that they're bad, and they can take him down and shoot him and whatnot. Yeah, so when you think about it from that point of view, okay, maybe you have a tool that's valid. The reality is these things are probably not going to be used in that manner. You know what I mean? You already have devices like your cell phone, like your Xbox One, like your brand new TV, your brand new washer and dryer, your refrigerator, right? That are already all spying on you on the network. And so this thing is just going to be another tool used to spy on you. So now that little spider that you see hanging in your shower, right? You think, oh, I'm gonna leave him there. Well, that spider could probably be watching you. And now we know. It's funny when you connect that with the other story. The NSA has already been. First of all, they've already admitted that all the spying that they've done hasn't caught any terrorists. It's been absolutely worthless. The second thing that's also interesting is there's many articles coming out from the NSA talking about how members of the NSA are using that technology to spy on their spouses.
Wow.
Right? So now if you're spying on your spouse and things like that, so what's to stop you from spying on, that random hot lady who lives down the street from you, right? Or you spy on that little kid because you're a pervert like that, and now you're sneaking drones into people's bedrooms and watching them in their sleep.
I mean, I think I'm way older than my brothers, but there was a movie that came out called Blue Thunder, which was about this super helicopter that that law enforcement agents made, and there's a scene in there where they had this infrared camera, and they were able to look into this woman's house and see her in the nude. And I mean, again, we do have to continue to make that connection between Hollywood and the prediction that is being made about technology, especially within surveillance. So be a little bit more analytical in your films, like the guy, he referenced Oblivion. What are these movies attempting to predict, or what are they telling you has already been made? Because we know that some of the same agents or agencies that are involved in Hollywood, they're also involved in law enforcement, and they're also involved in government, which is why you're not going to see too many documentaries about undermining those agencies in reference to surveillance. Not unless Tom Cruise starts a subversive police force. So I do want you to continue in terms of you have an interesting article for them about cartoons and surveillance.
Yeah, and there's a video, and I'll post it up for you guys. This actually comes from Infowars.com. And there's a cartoon that comes out on Disney, which my youngest daughter, well, not my youngest anymore, my second youngest, which she watches on Disney. And the premise is this little drone ladybug that spies on children whose parents are never around, and the children need help. So this thing sends out a broadcast back to some central office, and these other people come to help this child who is alone without his parents.
Wow.
The child is all alone without their parents, and they need help. And then this thing sends signals to another agency to come back and give help to the child. Where the hell are the parents at? Right? So I asked my daughter, I said, well, first of all, I was watching it on my Facebook page. It popped up, and I clicked it on. She goes, oh, I know that cartoon. Right? You watch that? Right? She's like, yeah, it's a new one that kind of came out. She goes, it's helpful because, the kid is alone and they need help, and this thing gets them help. And I said, okay, well, so where's the parents? She goes, I don't know. They talk about the parents, but they're never there. And I said, well, so if the parents are never there and they're depending on these other people to help them, do you think that child will start to depend on these other people more and not the parents? And she was like, yeah, that's not good. Why are they teaching the kids? And then, yeah, my daughter's pretty smart.
Definitely.
So it's interesting because she didn't pay attention to it like that until I kind of started asking her those questions to get her to kind of think in that manner. And she was like, oh well, okay, I see what you're saying. Like that doesn't make sense to me. why would they do that in cartoons, Dad? And I was like, well, and I kind of had to explain to her what's going on, but they're pushing this propaganda on our children, and it's not the adults who get it, right? It's the kids who get it, and they just grow up thinking that's normal, right? So one thing is watch what the hell your kids are watching. Sit down and watch an episode with them, and see what it's about, and have those conversations with them, and then be an active force, I think, in your parents' life, because it seems like a lot of shows are showing the children being apart from the mother and father. And then you got to think about statements that are being made by people on MSNBC who are saying things like, your kid doesn't belong to you, they belong to the community. A community is just a group of people. So what group of people are you talking about my child belongs to? You talking about my child belongs to this community that this little ladybug is signaling responses to, right? And then, the other thing I think that cartoon shows is just how they do spy on you, and they are watching your moves, whether it's a ladybug or it's your brand new TV, like I said, washing machine, things like that. They definitely have a fix on your Facebook page, your Google.
Wow, a lot of developments in the world of technology, I must say. What was the name of the cartoon again?
Oh, let me pull that up.
Sure. You know what? What we can do is take a quick break. And,
I had
go ahead.
I had an article that tied a little bit into you just mentioned Google.
Great.
Yeah. So this one also comes from LiveScience.com, but it's dealing with the your robot helper is on the way. Now it can learn from its friends. So
It's friends.
yeah, it's friends.
My robot has friends.
Right.
Okay, I thought only people had friends. But
So as a
is that going to be a special section of my Facebook where I can add robot friends, or
Probably.
is it just going to blend in?
probably, well, according to this article, they'll be able to go on your Facebook for you. No, but there's a video on here that basically shows robots with the ability to make sandwiches, find objects in your home, wash your clothes, assemble your furniture, things of that nature.
Wow.
So inevitably, you're going to see another job loss because there won't be a need for a maid anymore when you can just get a robot to do it.
Doesn't
So
seem
no
like there's
more,
going to
no
be.
more French maids?
That's a special website.
Yeah.
That's you.
I'm sure. Well, they have those too. You know what I mean? But that's for another show. But yeah. So I think things like this. And I said on another show, like the more technology improves, the less job opportunities are going to be for people.
Right.
And then you're going to have a lot of people who, and this ties into what happened to me earlier this week, where someone stole my car battery out of my car. There's going to be more desperation for people to survive, and it's going to affect us in our own communities first.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because, why would you go to your own community where people are very, scraping to get by, and you can go to another community and get much more?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's because obviously it's a lot easier and, things of that nature. But, I say all that to say that when you look at this technology boost, yeah, it's cool. It's definitely cool. But remember, the more you endorse it, the less opportunities is going to be for your children and their children and their children, so on and so forth.
Right.
Unless you make sure that you really teach them how to build these types of things at a young age.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. What came to mind was the movie I, Robot, and how one part of the movie, they had the robots that were helping the people, and then when they switched to the bad thing, the lady couldn't get out of her house. She was on complete lockdown. You know what I'm saying? People were getting punked through the street all by the robots that were helping them fired. So, yeah, like the guy was saying, technology is cool. And there's another story. This guy got dragged out of a movie for wearing his Google glasses.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Inside a movie. He didn't get dragged out by movie security. He didn't get dragged out by police. He got dragged out by the FBI. They came and they dragged him and his wife out of the movie. Now, here's what I find interesting is that they would know if your Google glasses are on or off because they have that built into the Google glasses. So they shouldn't have shredded him in the first place because they should have looked and saw that it was off. Number one. So they still shred him anyway, and they pull him out of the movie and they harass him and his wife for like an hour and a half. asking them questions because they're trying to steal the movie, I suppose. So you got to think all the good things that come with technology. What's the other side of it?
Right. And who's to say that, okay, you have a robot in your house who grow attached to, they fix your sandwiches, they, tell you nice things when you had a bad day, that for whatever reason you're on the bad side of law enforcement or whatever the case may be. Who's to say that they can't use that robot to get you?
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Or based on the hacking aspect, because obviously these robots will be connected to some sort of network.
Right.
So who's to say someone can't hack into
Right.
that network?
Some little kid is like, hey, watch this. I'm going to turn this robot against this this lady.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen Chucky, so just keep that in mind. Hey, thank you both for that. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to conclude our Don't Snooze on the KOS News 2. Peace.
Peace.
We make our plans, sure. But life is what happens to you along the way. At first I didn't want this. I didn't want to connect. I didn't want to get involved. And she kept on at me, This is what life is. This is why we're here, to connect, to build. We're here to build something.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge of Self radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace, Rule Allah.
Peace. Junkies, knowledge of law.
And we would like to continue our discussion about current events. And we want to reveal just a few interesting articles from the world of sports and politics and anything else that we want to throw into the mix. So there's an interesting discussion out there. You can check out Forbes magazine. As well as the ibtimes.com, which talks a little bit about how ticket sales for Super Bowl, because we're now looking at Super Bowl 48, they fluctuated over the years. So according to Forbes, the average going rate for tickets to go to the Super Bowl this year is about $2,500 per ticket. Okay, and one of the things that they're saying is that this has changed over the course of, I guess, the last few Super Bowls because of not only the teams being featured, but also hotel expenses in the area where people have to stay, among other things. If you check out a website, infographic, it's located on Forbes, but also through IB Times. I want to be really specific with this. So if you check out www.forbes.com/sites Jesse Lawrence, it has an interesting discussion on there about how to plan to go to the next Super Bowl. And on that page, you can find an infographic link which shows you the price fluctuation of Super Bowl tickets since that time. What's interesting about this article is just, we're talking about times where the economy is down, unemployment is extremely high, yet sporting event tickets are extremely high. If you take a look at this site, you're going to find something that says Super Bowl 48 tickets, travel, and weather. And it just kind of gives you a really good idea about what the going rate is for Super Bowl tickets and all of the expenses that are thrown into it. So how does everybody feel about, this promotion of the Super Bowl? And, they're saying ticket prices are anywhere from $2,500 to like $3,600.
It's interesting because I was reading an article last week about a New Brunswick man who's suing the NFL because the Super Bowl ticket prices are so high. Yeah, because well, he's basically stating that him being a season ticket owner, and the basis of the pricing of the tickets throughout the year, it's not really in accordance with the average, I guess, amount of money that a fan pays for a ticket. How does it go from paying maybe 100, 200, less than that in some cases, to that thousands of dollars.
Right.
You know what I mean? And basically he's in court working on trying to get his money in regards to that. But let's see what else it says here.
That's interesting because there was also, prior to that, there was if you lived in California, right, you couldn't buy tickets to the Seattle Seahawks game. So,
wow. Is that surprising? No, I mean, wow, man.
So I wonder what that's about. I guess no one in California is complaining about high ticket prices because they can't go.
Right. Well,
okay, so
go ahead,
his name is Bruce Nagel, and basically there's or the attorney's name is Bruce Nagel, and he argues that the NFL violated a provision of the New Jersey Consumer Fraud Act by only making 1% of their approximately 80,000 tickets available to the general public through a lottery. So even if you do have the money to get a Super Bowl ticket, there's a certain process to getting access to the tickets. So there's only like it said, 1% go through a lottery to have access to the tickets.
Wow.
So it's generally the superstars and the people who aren't really the biggest fans. Really could care less about the teams, but more of the spectacle.
Who's just there for the being there.
Exactly.
And the interesting thing about that is if you look at this infographic on Forbes, they have Super Bowl 43, the highest price for a Super Bowl ticket is $2,097, the lowest being about $1,100. And then we go to Super Bowl 45, which actually the tickets cost more during Super Bowl 45 than the current Super Bowl at $3,649 per ticket. That would be the highest price, and the lowest price being $2,260. So, I mean, Mr. Nagel has a really good argument there,
It probably has to do, this year probably has to do with it because now It's like the first year that they're going to have it in a cold climate
Mm.
in New York,
Okay. Right.
not in a dome. So it's going to be interesting to see how people react to being in the cold. Usually it's in the,
It's
more.
a nice warm
Yeah,
place.
right.
And, yeah, you can hang out. And, yeah.
Yeah,
You have to be all
t-shirt
bundled
on,
up.
right.
Yeah, no scantily clad performances on this day.
But,
Exactly.
yeah, but you won't probably have any, what's that, wardrobe maybe?
Malfunction, right?
With the big down jacket on
Yeah.
and a hoodie.
They have travel and weather here, and it says, I'm looking at the same infographic, flights to the Super Bowl from Seattle, Thursday nonstop, $633, Friday connecting, $496. I mean, you all have to look at this from hotel
Man.
costs, I mean, it's amazing just how prices just go sky high during these types of events.
Well, so this just brought something to my mind. I think we did a current event. I was just one of the three of us that did a current event on how everything going digital. People will now be able to, by people I mean corporations, because corporations are people too. Right? Will be able to boost the price of things based on who you are walking by. So if you're an individual who makes more money than the next person, when you walk by, the sale price will be one thing versus the person who has a lot more money. When he walks by, the sale price will be another thing. So this kind of going online and then them being able to boost prices. I think when things go completely digital, way more digital, things like this may not really come out as much,
Right.
Because it'll be more on a person-to-person basis, and it won't be such a big thing. So in order to make sales, maybe one guy can get his hotel room for $400 or whatever at a low-level rate, right? And then they sell it to another guy who's got more money in his digital account, and they're like, oh, well, the room is $12,000.
Right. Yeah, and they can do that, man. I mean, when you come in and you ask for a hotel and you've already researched the price of that hotel, they can easily tell you, well, we're kind of booked up, or we can give you a room for this amount of money.
It happened to me in San Francisco. I called the lady and everything. We drove down there, we got to the place, and she was like, oh, well, it's really this price, and we only have this room. I was like, wait, but when I called you, like, 5 hours ago, everything was okay. What happened? So,
Unbelievable. Why don't we go into politics? In your language, politics. I want to give it over to the God you kill.
Indeed. So I got a article that comes from InfoWars again. It's written by Paul Watson, and it's dealing with in Tennessee. They are passing a bill that would potentially shut down the NSA spy center.
Wow.
Yeah. So based on the Fourth Amendment Protection Act, this is coming from the article now, which mirrors legislation introduced in other states would prohibit local and state agencies from providing material support to any federal agency claiming the power to authorize the collection of electronic data or metadata of any person pursuant to any action not based on a warrant. So the long and short of that is, right now what's going on with the NSA and the spy agencies is that they're taking all your data, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing. Some people say, I don't have anything to hide, but you also go take a bath and you close your door and you put your blinds down, right? So you obviously do have something to hide. It's called your own privacy. There's certain things that you do that you don't want other people to know, regardless if they're good or bad or not. So what Tennessee is saying, unless you present a warrant, you're not going to be able to collect data on anyone who lives here. It will be illegal, and we will go after you if you do so. So props to Tennessee.
Right. And I'm happy that you share that because there's an article out on again CNN.com released Thursday, January 23rd. It's titled "Privacy Board NSA Telephone Records." NSA Telephone Records Program Illegal. So one of the things this article challenges, and there is mention of the American Civil Liberties Union discussing Section 215, which is what the brother just shared. It would allow certain government agencies to retrieve any records that they deem necessary to use in prosecuting people that may be considered, enemies of the state, people who may be involved in international or domestic terrorism. But what this issue brings up is the fact that although this has been discussed in the Obama administration, one of the things that the article revealed, and they quoted President Obama in saying that, um, there's really no reason to end this particular program because civil liberties aren't being violated. You can check this out on, again, www.cnn.com, and just put in a search on NSA telephone records, privacy board, and it'll bring up the whole issue. On with some more information about politics.
No, I got a different one that it's kind of more along the lines of health, but
That's peace.
I had the flu a couple days ago, so I figured it'd be a good time because I think a lot of people are dealing with that.
Yeah, hit them with it, guys.
This one comes from scientificamerican.com, and it says treating flu symptoms create more cases. Treating flu symptoms create more cases. So medicines that cut fever as well as pain, and I definitely learned this ahead of time from the God over here, Jaquil, actually allow the virus to flourish. And then obviously with the virus flourishing, now you can pass that virus on to someone else, and they pass it on, so on and so forth. So pain relievers like ibuprofen and acetaminophen, that long ACE word that's on the
Acetaminophen.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff they use for meth.
Exactly.
It's got to be good for you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut your wisdom, but as far as acetaminophen, some of you who go in, if you've probably found this over the last 2 years, if you go in and try to buy an antacid, your Prevacid, acid reducers, things of that nature, you notice in your pharmacy they're locked up. You have to get permission. That's because people are using those to make meth. So, keep that in mind.
Yeah, I remember that on Breaking Bad. They actually touched on that a little bit.
Using it to treat the flu.
Going along with that, though, they're also going, since things like that would be locked up, a lot of things are going to be over the counter prescription. So you're going to have to give your license to get that information, to get those products. So you could be denied for all kind of interesting things. If you paid attention to the news, the IRS is able to go after people if they say that they owe taxes and now you can't leave the state or the country just because they're opening a case against you. No proof they're opening a case against you, and they'll lock you down. So you gotta
crazy
look into things like that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to note when it comes to the flu or any kind of fever, the fever is something that is a positive thing. And like I said, Jaquil shared this with me. So your body elevates its temperature because bacteria and viruses tend to like to live at a temperature around 98.6. So your body elevates its own temperature to make it an undesirable living place for viruses and bacteria. So when you cut that or break the fever, which a lot of people try to do, you're making that environment suitable for the virus to continue to flourish and live. You know what I mean? So I know a lot of mothers hate to see their children suffering with the fever or going through those different types of things when they're ill. But don't break the fever, you know what I mean? You could, do things to make your child feel better, but do not break the fever because that's only going to make the illness last longer and, obviously, in essence, make it worse, make the process worse. So.
Right, because with the fever comes sweating, right? And some old belief is that you can sweat a cold out or an illness out, but then when you break the fever, then the chills come, which could be, in some cases it could lead to pneumonia in some situations. So,
sweating is one way to detoxify the body.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. Yeah. So say the skin is an organ within itself, and the primary, besides covering the body, right? One of the other things that it does is it helps things eliminate through the body, which aren't being so easily eliminated through the lymphatic system, which is how your body, like your body's sewer system. And so when that's backed up, the body has multiple fail safes built into it to help it still do what it needs to do. So although it can't eliminate through the lymphatic system, but it's trying to push it out through your skin, right? And it does that by sweating. So now if you break that, now the bacteria, the virus, whatever will grow in that area, and it spreads, to the lung and whatnot. You have real serious issues, right?
So I know we have we're coming in on the tail end of the show. What are we gonna have them do, view, and read? And I know we always just take this off at the top.
I know I have just one last thing. It
Yeah.
comes from a website called Black Youth Project. And the headline is 92% of black male teens are unemployed in Chicago. 83% nationally, according to the Chicago Urban League.
Wouldn't that explain the high homicide rate in Southside Chicago? Right.
Yeah, because a lot, you got to think like, you're living in a very impoverished community. You may want to go the righteous way to make some money for your family, but you're not able to get a job. You know what I mean? The ages are actually between 16 and 19 years old. So, that's a difficult time. You're in transition. You're trying to become a man. You're trying to. Actually, you're already probably you're under the situation of responsibility of a man at that time because your family isn't necessarily as structured as it should be a lot of times. So your father may not be there.
Right.
You may have younger brothers and sisters who may be relying on you, or your mom may be relying on you, but you can't bring her money the right way. So of course you're going to go the wrong, and then the wrong leads to you killing others, and you getting killed or in prison and things of that nature. So it's a vicious cycle, Vicious.
Right. Man, thank you for that, man. So I want to say peace to Chicago, and hopefully there's more of an effort, just like in any state, where our people inhabit, to just make more opportunities. So, does anyone have anything else to share?
No, we can go all day talking about interesting stuff going on in the news. 34 nuke missile commanders terminated from the duty. We can talk about how Congress gave power, basically dictatorial power, to Obama, allowing him to do what he wants to do with the NSA and things like that. We'll talk about that.
Right, so, I like to thank my brothers, of course. It's always a pleasure to be here with them. I would say one thing that I encourage our listeners and viewers to do is do your own research, cross-reference any type of information that is out there, and, put it through the test and see if it's knowledge. Anything that people would suggest a viewer's view?
For view, I would say take a look at alternative media. The old media that we grew up with, the MSNBC or the NBC and the CNN, Fox News, those kind of people are definitely falling off the shelf as far as keeping up with real news and giving it to you in the right and exact way. It was just CNN who interrupted an important, and I forgot exactly what they were talking about, but they were talking about something that was way more important than Justin Bieber, and the lady interrupts to talk about Justin Bieber. So, you're talking about CNN News talking about Justin Bieber. How important is that in the whole grand scheme of things going on? So, there's other news sources out there that are credible. And like the guy said, just check your sources, cross-reference, and use your brain, and then, pull out the truth.
Anything else as far as them reading?
It's kind of not really tying into this, but I haven't read it myself, but there was a book that just came out that talks about mathematics. We are mathematics as people, you know what I mean? And not so much that, we as the 5%, we already know that mathematics is the language of the universe, but, average person just thinks that mathematics is something that we discovered or we created after the fact. But the book, basically, the premise of the book, and I'm gonna find the name, is that mathematics is us and we are mathematics. And the name of the book is Our Mathematical Universe, and it's my quest for the ultimate nature of reality. And the author is Max Tegmark. So that's definitely a read I'm gonna get into. I haven't actually gotten into it yet, but check it out.
Sounds like our brother's been reading some of Supreme Understanding's books.
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, of course, Knowledge Yourself Radio brings it to you just and true. We wanted to give our brother Jakil the last word.
Knowledge Yourself Radio. You don't have to go to college to do the knowledge.
Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.